What's up, guys? My name is Michael, and today we want to talk about what makes a good photograph. So I think that a lot of these things that come in your mind will be tech related. I mean, you need to have a good lens, it needs to be sharp, you need to have a good settings in your camera, the aperture must be the way that it's supposed to be for that image. You need to have a lot of megapixels and so on. While all of that is really important, I think the most important things that make a good photograph are not related to technical things. The most important things that make a good photograph are not related to technical settings or technical items like your camera or your lens. So what are the most important things that make a good photograph? Let's talk about what I think is the one most important thing, and that's not your subject. Your subject is like second place or third place. The most important thing in photography is, what do you think? It's lighting. Lighting is the most important thing in photography. So the question that you would need to ask yourself is, what makes good lighting? The question is, what do you want your photograph to communicate with the viewer? So it depends on your subject, of course. It depends on the mood that you want to communicate with the viewer, and it depends on if your image is more a moody image or if it's a more colorful, vibrant image. So choose the lighting that suits the needs that you see for this image. Don't just take the lighting that is there. Maybe you should wait a day. You should wait for better weather. You should bring a flash. You should turn on a candle or whatever it takes to bring that feeling that your image is supposed to have really to life. So there are some properties that you can discuss when you talk about lighting. So one is the intensity of the light. That's a big thing. If the intensity of the light is high, then it's easier for you to find the settings in your camera that you want. If you have a pretty low intensity, it makes it harder to shoot it. But most of the times, lower intensity lighting means more moody images. For example, just what I was talking about, the candle. A candle is a really low intense light, but it creates a certain mood to the image. Second property of light is the direction. So if you look at sunlight, the direction changes all over the day and it changes the mood of your image a lot. So for example, when I went to Death Valley, we arrived there right at 12 o'clock. It was an awesome scene, really great. But we spent the night in Death Valley and I decided to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and watch the sunrise in the sand dunes. That was so awesome. It was a completely different thing. So keep that in mind. If you shoot something, remember to ask yourself if you have the perfect lighting or how to get the perfect lighting. And yeah, we have the intensity, we have the direction. We now need to talk about the color of light. The color of daylight, for example, it changes. If you go somewhere on sunrise, you have a different light color, and you have a different light color if you go there in the afternoon. So keep that in mind, that light colors can change. Next thing would be the question if you have hard light or soft light. Sunlight, for example, if you have no clouds on the sky, it will give you really hard light, which makes the contrast between the shadow and the light really hard. And there are subjects for which this is a really great thing, but there are also subjects like if you do portrait photography and you have the sunlight in your subject's face, I think this is not the best thing to do. So think about if the quality of the light really suits the image that you try to take. These are just some examples on how you need to look at light. So it's not just the question, do I have enough light? The question is really, what kind of light do I have? And is it the best lighting that I can have? Next thing would be probably your subject. So the question is, what makes a good subject? Well, I think a good subject is a subject that you like and that you enjoy photographing. So for example, some people take pictures of their cat and they love it. And other people, they take pictures of cars or airplanes or whatever it is. You need to shoot something that you really enjoy. So if you went to a cooking class and somebody asked you to cook a fish meal, if you don't enjoy eating fish, then why would you cook fish? Same is for photography. If you want to enjoy photography, take pictures of things that inspire you and that you love. So that might be your dog, it might be your car, it might be travel photography, street photography, whatever it is. But be sure to choose your subject with that in mind. Next thing would be your perspective. So what is a good perspective? I would say a good perspective is one that you don't have usually, especially if your subject is something that you see every day. So your subject by itself might be boring, but if you take it from an angle from which you usually don't see it, that might be from pretty low or from pretty up high. If you have a drone, you can do that trick all the time. Your daily subject will become interesting just like that. Ask yourself if you have the best possible perspective, and if not, move around. Use prime lenses for that reason. You will move a lot more than if you have a zoom lens. And if you move around, you will be forced to find a good perspective, much more than if you use a zoom lens. So perspective, really, really important thing. Next thing would be composition. Composition and your perspective belong together, but if we talk about composition, then we're talking about where in your frame would you place your subject. And I think the most lazy thing that you can do is put your subject right in the middle of your frame. If you put your subject in the middle of the frame, I can almost promise you that it's gonna look boring. So you can look for things like rule of the thirds, Fibonacci spiral, or whatever it is. There are so many things that give you guides on how to position your subject in the frame. But to be honest, just play around. If your subject is symmetrical, then there's only one right thing to do. Put it in the middle. And not just almost in the middle, put it exactly in the middle. All right? Symmetrical things should be in the middle of your frame and should look symmetrical. Keep that in mind as well. An important thing while talking about composition is the question if you shoot portrait or landscape. Have you ever thought about where these names come from? Then you should do it right now. It almost doesn't make any sense to shoot a portrait in landscape, all right? But sometimes you can do that, of course. Nobody's gonna have a problem with that. The question is, do you think it looks better in this way or that way? So if you choose whatever orientation because you prefer it and you like it much better this way, then that's fine. If you do it because you didn't think about it, or you just did it like this for years, then maybe that's something you should reconsider. Think about if your subject should be in portrait or landscape mode. As I just told you, most portraits look good in portrait and most landscapes look good in landscape. But sometimes that doesn't matter and you can do whatever you want. Let's talk about portraits a little more. If your subject is a portrait, then the most important thing in your image is not the lighting, it's not your composition, it's the expression in the face of your subject. So please make sure that your subject is comfortable. Make sure they are getting something to drink. Make sure you show them the images that you just took. Make sure to talk to them. Don't put a line in between your camera, yourself, and the subject, and make sure that you have a conversation, you talk to each other. You will get much better images if you include them in your process and you show them what they look like. You know what? We could talk about this topic all day long. There are so many things that don't have anything to do with your camera, your lens, your setting, that really make your photograph a good photograph. I give you one more thing to consider, which is how you present your image. So if you took an image that you really like and you think it's one of the best shots that you ever took, then you should make sure that you present it in a way that really shows that you enjoy this image and this is an image that you really like. So make sure you make a print. Make sure it's a good quality print. Think about framing. Think about how another person will look at this image. So don't just end it with the push of a button. Make sure that you present your image in a way that it also deserves to be presented. Okay? So we didn't now talk about post-production. We didn't talk about any technical stuff, which really was the purpose of this video, just to give you an idea about what it really takes in photography to be a good photographer. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a thumbs up, hit subscribe, leave comments. Let's talk about this topic and discuss about your photography and your way of seeing things. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you next time. Goodbye. Thanks.